Hello everyone, welcome to the conversation series Thomas Kilpper, Printmaking Beyond. This is a project made possible by the ACDFS of the Cultural, Sports and Travel Bureau. The project name is called Beyond Paper and is part of the Printmaking 368 series. Here comes our speaker today, Mr. Thomas Kilpper from Germany.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me and having me here. It's a great pleasure, and I hope you can see everything. I'm focusing in this talk basically on my projects related to printmaking, but originally I came not from printmaking, but actually drawing. Right. So while being a student, I was excessively doing large-scale drawings. This is a drawing from memory from my hometown, Stuttgart. Right. Being a dreamer, kind of, when I was at the time dreaming a lot, flying over cities. And this is the city I was studying at the art art academy in Düsseldorf. At the time, Joseph Beuys still came once at a time in a month. And it was a kind of an atmosphere of being a little bit rebellic and not so conservative as the academy where I started to study in Nuremberg, actually. Right. So, and while being a student, I was very much intrigued as well on the work of Gordon Matta Clark, actually. I adored his approach to intervene in the existing substance, and like this work cutting into an empty building and splitting the building. But when I was a little bit like fed up, not fed up, but I wanted to intensify the drawing process, I came across the longing of doing kind of carvings, and the questions of Gordon Matta Clark, for example, how you can interfere in this substance. I wanted to transfer it in another way. I wanted to go into deeper files of the history of a place, for example. Right. And then I came across this empty American army barrack close to Frankfurt, where I studied at the time, the Camp King, so-called, and discovered that I was able to do not only just a woodcut, but refer as well to the loaded history of this place. So the site was used by the Nazis as an interrogation camp for downed pilots in the Second World War. And after the Second World War, the Secret Service of the American Army made trainings and set up the German Secret Service there, the so-called Democratic Secret Service, but with continuity of the personnel. So this guy was proud to be the head of the Nazi Secret Service during the Second World War. He got the head of the Secret Service of the so-called Democratic Western Germany at the time. So I depicted him in the tradition of put a critique to the power structure. As you can see here, a medieval woodcut from 1500 from the Pope, who was the major power figure next to the kings in Europe at the time. And it is a Protestant kind of a cartoonish woodcut And referring in my woodcut to this nasty guy is kind of a clear critique in this very tradition of the medieval medium of printmaking. So in the very beginning of the printmaking, the critique was already embedded in the medium as such. Here you see my display of prints. They are all taken from the very floor of this very building, and they refer to the history. What happened on the floor, I brought back in some images. I depicted different kind of references. They are more or less directly related to the very place.
Mm-hmm. I can see something on the roof as well, right? On the ceiling as well.
Exactly. Yes. So it became an all-over installation, so to say.
Okay.
So, and trying to make the two-dimensional medium of printmaking kind of a medium for putting up installations and all over. So this is one of my questions I try to work with as an artist. And of course, it's as well a question, on the one side, you have a medium from the medieval. Can it be relevant in digital times, so to say?
Right.
Can it be relevant in contemporary art anymore? And so one issue, of course, was as well this exploding size. For me, it was 1 year of carving on the knees for this very project. And the text going through the image was meant to keep the image together, that it's not falling apart in this very size. So it's about 20 meter by 13 meter height. And it was displayed at the town hall. This is the town hall of the town where I made the carving. So I thought this text goes, where may I get the gray tones back again as a text? So dealing on the one side with the issue of woodcut, which basically plays with a black and white contrast, but it's as well referring on a content in the content of fascism and war. Is there any gray tones? And you are losing these gray tones if the polarizing situation of fighting and a war and Nazism comes into play in a society. So, and so that was clearly a reference to this loaded history on the one side. And suddenly, you know, I just started this project. I wanted to do a simple woodcut, so to say. But then the town decided, oh, this needs to be preserved for the past and for the future. And so they dissected the entire floor for me. And I made then later a cast in concrete with a very woodcut. So, and it's quite interesting, this gray tone issue, which is embedded in the text, came into play in a new version because
suddenly you have all the gray tones you want.
Exactly, and but it's a little bit like reversed, because where it was meant to be black, it's a little bit higher, and there it's drying. If it is humid and it has maybe rained a little bit, the water stays in the lower part, which was meant to be the white part. So it's playing with this black and gray tones in a very nicely way.
So you have double your return. You have a very good...
Exactly. Yeah, it's a art piece in public space.
Right.
And of course it was completely a surprise for me because it developed out of the whole project as such. And I was one of the oldest student at the time when I started this project.
Right.
And I just finished while I was doing this project, my studies. And it was perfect for me just to organize my own exhibition projects and not waiting to get invited by curators or any
excellent.
Nice people in Hong Kong. So I knew I have to start my own projects, you know.
Right.
And I succeeded, or for me it was like a lottery win almost. That it happened that the city wanted to preserve it, and then they transferred it in a public space, public artwork, you know.
So now it's like an installation in a public space.
It's still existing.
Okay.
And
but does it belong to you or belongs to the?
No, it's the commune, the municipality. They own it. They realized it and they financed it.
Okay.
So it took 4 years to get realized. So they stored the wooden pallets and the wooden carvings. And now the original carving is in a museum even.
Right.
So,
okay.
I sold it to a collector to a very symbolic small price.
Right.
But it financed one of my study years later. When I was, I had a stipend in London. And, after this project, going to London was fantastic, and I knew I want to do another work in an empty building and intervening in the existing substance. And I found this very building in Southwark, not far from the construction site of Tate Modern. At the time, Tate Modern was not open. It was at the brink to get opened. It was about to open. And I thought I will never do a woodcut in this size because it's so much work. And but then I discovered in this very building was a lovely parquet flooring, and on top it was stored this very piece. What you might know, it's the oldest printed book, the Diamond Sutra, which was found in China.
This place belongs to the British Museum or the British Library, something like?
British Library. And this building was the East India collection of the British Library inside.
Okay.
Before they moved to St. Pancras. So at the time they moved to St. Pancras, this was empty, this building. And now it was due to get demolished. And a renowned architect, Will Alsop, was the architect to make the new building. And I approached the landlord, may I do an intervention in the building? And because of the fact that it is the oldest woodcut that we know up to date, stored in the very building, I had the feeling I have to make a reference to that as well.
Yeah.
Do a woodcut again, even I didn't want to, but and then I got a permission and I had the entire building. So it's about 12 floors high, and it was the largest studio ever an artist had in London, I guess.
So did you carve the whole 12 floors?
No, only only one. And each floor, I mean, it was 400 square meter, the floor.
Yeah.
And so I depicted as well a little bit larger size of the Diamond Sutra, and the one who was in charge inside of the British Library to keep it in a good condition, he presented it, and then at the very side, Hitchcock made one of his first films, The Ring. It's a silent black and white movie of a boxer who fell in love with a ticket girl at a boxing ring. And here you see the printing roll I built for this very printing process in
Is
London.
that you? In the
It's
photograph?
not me. It's a friend. It's a friend. And he helped printing, and
Wow.
the size was even larger than the first project. It was 400 square meter, and basically as well referring to the history of the place. At the side there stood a chapel, a round-shaped octagonal chapel, and the chapel in the Second World War got bombed by German air raids. Before the chapel was some 10 years or so empty, and then it transferred into a boxing venue actually. So quite an interesting history and crazy. And then they erected in the 50s this building where the British Library hosted its India collection, East India collection.
Right. I can see some Chinese characters as well as on the windows that you are now displaying.
Yes, exactly. There was a text referring to my grandfather, who was a missionary in China. And this text was in Chinese, actually.
Yeah.
And I presented on the foil that was placed into the windows to protect the books from the sun, the impact of the sun rays.
UV light.
So it was a protection film, fairly silver film, and I stripped off the print, this film, and printed on the floor with it, and placed it back into the window. So you see these characters like almost a little bit like ghosts, these portraits. And then during the exhibition, which was the very first time, it was I made the project on my own. I just started without having any institutional partner. But then I thought maybe it would be good to get an institutional partner to organize the exhibition. And the South London Gallery was happy to do that, which was amazing to me because it's a fantastic public communal gallery.
Right.
And so the entire print was stitched together by a company. And so the printing process is that I can maximum print 3 meter wide. And the entire print here that you see is maybe 24 meters wide and 15 meter high or something similar, 16 maybe.
So the white space is
the
room,
the staircases,
okay,
and the lift and the toilets.
Right.
So, what did you ask? Sorry.
Just the same. You answer my question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and I placed as well this the ring returns to Blackfurs boxing tournament. So because the entire print is kind of, here is the canvas in the middle, the boxing, and they are all visitors of this boxing fight. Most of them have bow ties, for example, and there is, because of the air raids as well, German army, and but here the boxer, he was a local hero, and for me, Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay, the American boxer, I was as a little boy watching and being impressed and feeling chilling feelings and so on. And here are as well these Chinese characters. But it's a little bit, it might be too difficult, and referring to East India and Asian history and Karl Marx Mao Zedong,
Right.
and different references to Asian history.
Yeah, because I can see on the other side is the boxers uprising that you have carved by the lamppost. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here.
No, a bit to the right.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the box.
Here is Handel was played in this boxing ring, and
A bit further to your left. The few Chinese words. Yeah, this one. Yeah, here.
Here. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, there's a boxer uprising, which is like.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Welcome to the boxing uprising.
Yeah.
Which was as well in China, this movement, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the Qing dynasty, I think. Or
yes.
Early.
Yeah.
Late Qing.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is what, in the 80s or in the 90s?
I made that in 2000.
Okay.
Yes. And after this very project, I had the feeling I have to erect myself again, like getting upright, because I was carving again 1 year
on the floor,
on the knees, on the floor, and then printing some 5 months or so. So it was intense project again, being on the floor, so to say. I got floored. And I wanted to get upright again. And I discovered this very empty building next and opposite to the House of Parliament in London.
Right.
In Lambeth. It was belonging to St. Thomas Hospital.
Right. It seems to be a swimming pool, isn't it?
And it's the swimming pool of a nurse's home from St. Thomas Hospital. Right. So they had their own little pool, the nurses, and around the pool, which was in the basement, they were living, and they had built-in beds, built-in cupboards. Each nurse had a small room, and they were completely refurbished or with wooden furniture. And I was able to strip off the entire building, all the wooden parts that I need to, basically bring back this furniture wood into the form of a former tree. So before the entire building gets demolished.
Right.
And referring as well to its history. So basically that was complete different project. It was not directly in any case related to printmaking, but it was as well like attaching these floor patterns as the surface of the tree on top of the longer beams, these very short ones. So to me, it's as well a very important project and one of the most difficult ones, because it was as well long-term, 7-month building on and off, doing the same kind of procedure, but very physical as well.
Just you alone?
I did it basically alone, more or less. Yes.
Okay. A lot of manual work.
Yes. I didn't have assistant at the time. And now we jump in the last project, the Drowning Hercules tree project. That was 2001, and it opened a very few days after September 11. And so it was quite spooky. Not many people came to the opening. The city of London was pitch dark. There was no light in the streets at the day of the opening, because they were fearing maybe another attack would happen. I think it was the day after September 11 it opened, or 2 days later. Okay. So it was really extraordinary.
Right.
And now we jump back into a printing project. When I moved back from London to Germany, I moved to Berlin. I didn't want to go back to Frankfurt for several reasons. And I lived then first in the former west of Berlin and then moved to the former east. But it's all after some 12 years after the reunification already, or even more, 20 years, some 20 years.
Right.
And now we are in 2009. This is belongs to the former headquarters of the GDR's state security, the policing, and this very building was empty for a long time and is still empty. And I was able to get permission to carve into its flooring, and again with the concept that I refer to the history and the function of the very place. So I searched images related to state surveillance, policing, state repression, and I just opened and cut into the existing floor. In this case, it was not a wooden parquet.
That's not nice. Yeah.
This is kind of a lino cut. It's kind of a plastic surface.
Oh, okay.
And we projected to the floor. So you see here some ladders, and we mounted on the ladder projectors, analog projectors, like they gave light, and it was a black and white projection. And so we got help with these projectors in carving, and so basically cutting away the light, so to say.
Right.
And to make it more efficient in the contrast, we colored the floor with a white color to have more contrast in the projection.
Okay.
You know? So for this reason, the floor looks a little bit whitish.
Right.
It was more a gray, green, and here you can clearly see the projection, a little bit pale, but enough for us to give us hints where to cut. And I depicted as well images of protagonists of fighting against state repression. For example, this person, she was an anti-fascist living close by, and was arrested by the Nazis and later freed after the Nazis collapsed. And you see here a complete printing office made from the floor. The floor already is blacked. So the blacking happened for the entire print, which was as well made in sections of 3 meter wide. And in this case, it was 21 meter height of the image. And because it's 40 meter wide, I needed to make it in 2 sections. So it's in 2 parts, the entire piece.
Right.
So, and here it's depicted the former Chancellor Willy Brandt from Social Democratic Party. Right. And next to him, this guy was Günther Guillaume, and he was actually directed from this very building as a spy, and led to the resignation of Willy Brandt as a chancellor when this came into our notion and the public notion. So he resigned as chancellor. And because the Social Democratic Party actually was fairly doing politics respecting the GDR, I think the GDR government putting a spy next to a social democratic chancellor was a big political mistake from their perspective. But they did, and they failed. And so here you see in the same building, I presented the prints in the celebration hall above the very floor where I cut it. So in this project, a little bit different from the very first. For example, I placed these prints separated from the floor because it was very low, and this hall had a high ceiling, quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And so this guy was, for example, the head of the federal police in the Western German part, and he invented a special way of searching for wanted people, and which is until now, he was one of the first in the 70s using already computer in the police search and stuff like this. So the controlling is not only an issue of the GDR. I wanted to open it up as well to our past, our Nazi history, and dealing with these issues in a critical way. So this was as well then kind of mirrored to the public space, what has happened inside the building, so that the people living around get a little bit an idea what has happened inside the building. And it gives as well kind of a hint to the size of the space. And I came to it was my feeling, I don't want to go bigger as such, because I put these patterns which are next door to it. We can't see them. They are architectural elements from GDR history, playing with light and airflow. And I put these to combine all the single portraits and images of people connected to repression and so on. So, but as an entire image, I have the feeling it's almost failed as a strong image. You know, it's not a eye catcher as such, but I don't mind. It's more a labyrinth. But for us here it's almost a little bit too small or too detailed. You almost can't see these details of these portraits or so, but it's fine. It's and yeah. And after that, a year later, I got invited to the Venice Biennial from a Greek curator who curated the Danish pavilion, actually. So it was a very international artist group doing this group exhibition on the freedom of speech. And I suggested to build a pavilion in the garden of the Danish pavilion, a very romantic place, actually, with trees. And I wanted to open up an opportunity to sit down, to relax, but with a very loaded floor again. So it's not just to relax, but as well to contemplate on the issue of European politics. Where does it go? 2011, Berlusconi in Italy, a right-wing politician, was president in Italy, and we had already at the time the beginning of extreme nationalistic tendencies within France, Marine Le Pen, but as well in Netherlands, in Scandinavia. So I depicted a lot of people who are promoting a new nationalistic approach to politics, partly anti-European, and I put myself here as well in the floor next to this is Netherlands politic conservative Rutte and so on, and the Pope is here as well, and Berlusconi, and that I'm in it is kind of ironic, but I having as well my dark sides, and this is yes, and so you see that there I created kind of a new space,
right?
And I was not able to do any printing before the opening. It was too short notice. It was I had to carve on site, and you know it's closed, and the setting up of the biennial fairly strict entrance and so on. So it was difficult, and I have to sneak in at night, because at night you get better projection. At daylight it's not possible. At the time I had these devices, they were not so strong.
Right.
And because the exhibition was related to the freedom of speech, I built this megaphone people were allowed to use. It's not it's just a megaphone piece without any amplifier, and I opened it up for lectures. Philosopher from Hungary came talking about Viktor Orban, who was already in power at the time, a very conservative politician, and opened it up as well as a place where art students from the academy in Munich came to do a group performance for 2 days. So yeah. Now we jump to Latin America, in Medellin, in Colombia. I was invited to do as well a carving project in an empty site, or it was not meant to get destroyed. The entire building is still existing, but they wanted to get a new orchestra pitch. So I was able to destroy the orchestra pitch, so to say. I cut it up with images as well related to Colombian history. I worked with 2 art students from Medellin in Colombia, and we discussed the political situation on the ground. So a little bit comparable to our project in Hong Kong, to get as well, so that I was as well learning from them, and then transferring into an artistic language, so to say, and then getting the print as well published to the public at a facade of, in this case, it was not the facade of the theater. It was the main theater of the city of Medellin, but of the museum that organized this exhibition. MDE 11, MDE 11. It was as well in the fall of 2011, kind of a biennial. So how to overcome the estate of negligence was the title of my work. And I depicted protagonist who got, actually he was an actor who acted on the stage where I made the piece, but he got killed by right-wing militia who was fighting against people of emancipation and left-wing people, unionists, and so on. And so here he was one of the head of the right-wing government in Colombia, and he was the freedom fighter. So next to each other, people who never would have met, I put together in one image. And for some people, it was almost unbearable, and it had a lot of tension and stirring up, and at the same time, people started to discuss issues of the city and of the country, actually.
Mm.
And some 4 years later, I already had started to teach in Norway, in Oslo, at the museum where Munch's Scream is displayed. I had the chance to do a woodcut in the very in the very building of this famous museum. Upstairs was Munch, one of the precious paintings, one of the most famous paintings of the world. Every child knows, and we were carving and doing dust, creating a lot of dust and referring to woodcut. And the exhibition was titled 500 Years of Woodcut, which is a very European perspective, as you know, because the very first that we have seen, the Diamond Sutra, for example, it's from 960 something. Yeah. So it's much older than 500 years. But this is something I regret, of course, but
why?
You can't tell these kind of curators, we shouldn't call it 500 years into printmaking, which it's much older, and where's the reference to China, which is 600, 700 years older. It's missing, unfortunately. But this museum presented as well, and they own this Albrecht Dürer Melancholy and for riders. How are they called? These riders. They bring death and problems to the people. So the war and here the injustice, which should be balanced as a justice, and so on. So I referred in another in my piece. These are the 4 apocalyptic riders of 4 politicians. One of he's in charge of the army and finance and culture, and going towards a dark future. So they are all as well carved in this very floor. And at the same time, I referred to the building's architecture. These arches are to be seen from outside, but inside you don't see it. And tried to create again an installation which is an all over, all 4 sides, the floor, the walls and the ceiling is integrated. The print on the ceiling is on fabric.
Right.
So it's fixed and pulled so that it is not bowing down, but being fairly flat. And it created this kind of positive and negative again, that you have the negative on the floor,
right,
and the print is above you then,
Right.
and to the left and to the right.
Mm-hmm.
So the floor is conceived being two sides of a book, like 2 pages, and they are opposite. Here, this politician on the right on the floor is here on the left side. And this is one of the ministers of culture. Artists think business. Her critique is that we are not making enough profit as artists. So, and another, Matthias Faltbacken is a contemporary hipster artist. He's quite successful in Norway and Scandinavia and Europe. And he ironically says, so never do a woodcut and stuff like this. And the finance minister says the rich must get richer and so on, because the tax is supposed to get lower for the rich people. Was her plan, and so on. So yeah. And this is actually a commission for a building which was newly built as a school building in Bergen, right, where I was teaching. And so this is quite rare that I realized a commission to stay in place. And it was formerly provisionally a black box, and behind it there is a transformator for a certain reason. So it was interesting. The architect had originally planned to have this black box there, and I cut it up with text, what we can learn from you, what you can learn from us. So this double bind of a learning process, that it is not a one-sided project or attitude of teachers who are the teachers, but that we are as well learning from the students, and having depicted protagonists of this kind of emancipatory attitudes. So from different kind of educators and philosophers, writers, artists, and so on. So Rosa Luxemburg, Hannah Arendt, whoever. I mean, yes, a lot of interesting protagonists, so that the students can as well refer to them and research whatever. And I managed to print from it. So this is kind of the negative, but it's as well positive. I thought in this case, because the wooden part should stay at the wall. So this is the wooden matrix, so to say. And I managed kind of a trick, or I don't know how to say, but here you see the very print from it taken, and it's displayed in the museum in Bergen at a group exhibition again on printmaking. And for the second time, I glued the print on the wall like wallpaper almost. And I placed on top of it other artwork from the collection of the museum. Here is a Dürer, this Melancholy from Albrecht Dürer, which is in the collection of this very museum in Bergen. And this is Japanese. Yeah, Japanese, exactly. Hokusai, I think, or from the same period, at least. So and other are from my collection. So I combined very precious. Gauguin is as well depicted here, I think, and other artworks from friends of mine in my collection. And I question somehow, am I only the backdrop? My work is only the backdrop, and the real art is framed, and or how do they interact with each other and relate to each other? And the trick that I printed it on fairly thin Chinese paper.
Oh, and I know what you mean.
I put it on the backside.
Right.
But you hardly see a difference from color intensity or anything. So, and I was able to take it off, to peel it off afterwards without any destruction of the very print.
Oh, really? How clever.
Because I used enough water to make it not too gluey. And so I only printed it twice, and both prints are still existing.
Right.
And the apocalyptic writer conceived this other wall in this very show. So it was again kind of an installation, and this time, as I told you, with other artwork on top, Douglas Gordon and so on. And I made here a little study room situation with other printmakers' work, printmaking books, artist books, and so on.
I have a question, Thomas. I have a question.
Are we in time? We have some time.
No. Just a quick question. I mean, back to your previous slide. You mean the four writers?
Yes.
They are still your contemporaries, right? They're still in their job, right? In their posts.
I think most of them are still in politics.
Yeah.
But the government has changed like 2 years ago.
Right.
1.5 years ago. The conservative government didn't get re-elected.
Right.
It's now, I think, a social democratic government. It's a little bit different, a little bit more moderate.
I was just wondering.
Nationalistic.
Right. I was just wondering if they noticed your artwork, and did they complain that you're making fun of or using their portraits to communicate with some of these political ideas?
In Norway, I didn't get any complaint.
Okay.
In the Venice Biennial, it was interesting. One of these very conservative and nationalistic Italian politician wanted to make a photo shooting with the artist.
Okay.
Interesting. But
so
the artist said, I'm not keen to do that.
Okay.
So, you can, in Europe, officially, you are allowed to put a critique to authorities as long as it is peaceful and it is not aggressive or hateful. It's just a depiction and it's just the title. And they can cope with that because the stability is fairly given. They know this has little impact on society.
Okay.
So they are not afraid, so to say.
Right.
If our political situation turns into more fragility and more instability, maybe our freedom to express these things is gone. You never know. I mean, I think we have always to keep this in mind and look at the tendencies. It's never safe that it keeps like that. I'm pretty sure. So but of course I appreciate that we have this kind of opportunity and I think it's important that we use it.
Yeah.
And that we not only simply obey to any negative tendencies and speak up, but of course, if you are, let's say, a state institution and you promote this kind of work, maybe the curator gets a phone call or something. No, not sacked directly, but if you have then an image on the website relating, for example, to migration policy,
right,
putting a critique that the human rights should be looked after, and in the migration policy it's ignored in big parts, and then they ask you, what is this migration policy to do with your cultural institution and stuff? So it's a very subtle trying to influence you,
right,
but it's not putting you to jail or anything.
Arrest you or all that.
For the moment,
right.
It's fairly safe, I would say.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm not so sure what I should say. As you know, yes, I was very grateful to be able to work in Hong Kong at the time, 10 years ago, and realizing carvings on Chinese palettes. It was quite amazing, being the first time so far in the East, and trying to deal as well with social questions that I depicted at the time, and I reversed this very piece. It's mirrored, because it was the negative, it was the matrix, you know.
Right.
So this is kind of a little bit wrong, so to say. We can talk about it later if you want.
Yeah.
I just jump to the next.
Okay, no problem.
And we are back in Berlin, 2015.
Right.
In front of a communal gallery in Neukölln in Berlin. A lovely 100-year-old tree fell over, and before it fell over in a summer storm, I developed a project description that I would like in the gallery space, which is very long. It's 50-meter long, a gallery space, and only 6-meter wide. I suggested to place a tree in it, laying tree. And then this tree was falling over a year. And then they asked me, and they called me, what shall we do? The tree fell over. And I said, yeah, if you can put it aside and store it, it's fantastic that we use it in the exhibition.
But you have to cut them into pieces, right?
Exactly. It slices.
Right.
But we needed, kind of a caterpillar, a small one, in order to get it moved. Each piece is maybe 1,000 kilo or something, so 800, quite heavy stuff.
It's very hard wood, I can see. Yeah.
Yes.
Very solid.
And alongside, I presented drawings I made from arson and fire attacks on refugee homes in Germany, 2015, 16, 17. We had a lot of attacks against refugee homes in Germany, about 1,000 attacks and 150 or so were with fire bombing, and I searched in an archive on. I got the dates when happened what, and placed the name of the city and the date. So 12 October 2015.
Right.
Here and so on. So each is related to the very arson and fire attack, and with the name of the city.
So these are all drawings, not prints.
Exactly, here. But in the back, here you see kind of leaves in the tree with woodcuts related to racist attacks or homophobic attacks, but basically it's on the issue of xenophobia, which unfortunately exists as well, and we have to deal with and reflect it and talk about it. And I organized a communal workshop. Here you see the chairs and the desks. People were able to do their own prints.
Right.
And a friend of mine provided the workshop and was working together with these people from the neighborhood. And so coming back to this question of identity and being a printmaker, or like a thinker of Descartes, I think, therefore I am. It's the original, and then Barbara Kruger took on, and then Barbara Kruger got transferred by Thomas. And in a project, I was invited by the Edinburgh printmakers. Maybe you know them in Edinburgh, in Scotland. They got a new venue, and they invited me to do a carving in the floor in the very new building. And the building was formerly a company to produce plastic products in Britain. So I got this very same material laid out in the floor. So it's a plastic floor, and using images as well related to Edinburgh history. So when Joseph Beuys met Edinburgh curator there, and Andy Warhol as well. So they discuss about printmaking, and again I depicted the prints together as a wallpaper, and organized the print on the ceiling, and then the matrix is on the floor. So again, one of these installations, but I left most of the walls just blank in this case.
Right.
And actually it's one of very few samples that I printed in two colors. So, but it was in one go. So that I used the red with a smaller roller to have the text banners. They are kept in red. So yes, and the text basically goes around the Brexit. We don't understand our country. It was in the middle of Brexit situation. Vote to leave the European Union, and in Scotland, the people voted to stay within the European Union, and so in Scotland they were unhappy about the result, to be forced to leave the European Union, and there are tendencies that people in Scotland want to split from the United Kingdom.
Right.
So it's quite an interesting development.
Right.
Oops, and now we see a German tank. It's not for Ukraine, it's for art. This tank I used in an exhibition for the Munich new Pinakothek exhibition, which is a huge museum, one of the largest museum in Germany. And they in Bavaria, Franz Marc is a hero and a huge half-god artist from the beginning of the 20th century. And he painted these blue horses. And this painting is lost since the end of the Second World War. We don't know if it is still existing. The Nazis depicted it as Entartete Kunst, as a sample of degenerated art. And
why?
Franz Marc, the artist Franz Marc, he was very much in favor of the First World War and was fighting or arguing in favor. We have to fight against the French, and he was writing a diary. And for this reason, from being a soldier from the front in France, and I depicted quotes praising the war and getting more German as ever. And I used this tank for a piece. So the idea was that the tank is my chisel, actually, and doing the carving. But you see, it's only drawing.
It's not eating onto the wood, right?
So I kind of failed with this idea. I don't know why it's jumping back. The idea, as I said, was that the tank is my chisel. But the modern tanks, they have these rubber shoes to protect the streets and not to destroy too much the tar surface of our roads in peacetime. And they can take off these rubber shoes in case of going into the forest or wherever in wartime. They would take off the rubber. And of course, for me, it would have been interesting if the metal chain gets really like aggressive enough to get the carving.
Yeah.
But I got this lovely drawing, and I transferred the drawing into a matrix, so to say. So
okay.
This is then the carved. I carved it. And it's kind of negative. Then the black gets the bright side and the dark gets the white and stuff. But I thought this is doing the job. And here you see quotes of Franz Marc, the laying positive in the floor. So people were able to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And here is the very little drawing from Franz Marc as a sketch for his painting, which is lost. But the original drawing is still in the possession of the museum.
Right.
as a little postcard, so to say, you know. So,
Okay.
and it was the first time I got invited to do this kind of floor piece as a woodcut for a group exhibition.
Right.
And I thought, what can I do because it's so dominant to do these kind of floor piece. So for this reason, I thought I only do it with these traces of the tank and the quotes and no portrait and stuff like this. But still, it's of course quite strong and a dominant piece.
Right.
But the curator was happy with it. And the first time I used here a digital plotter or CID carving device from a company. They transferred my text, the quotes from Franz Marc into this electronic carving.
Is that a CNC drilling machine or the routing machine?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very nice, precise, and
very sharp.
Exactly. And that was then the entire print was hanging in the entrance of the very museum. So
is this from the floor?
This is from the floor.
Okay.
Exactly. And
very nice.
the fabric, we see the backside of the fabric, so to say, you know. For this reason, it's positive again.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it's a almost translucent fabric.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like a film.
Exactly. Yeah. And the very last is just something what I as well didn't know. Is it possible? I was invited to contribute to this hall of like 160 artists. Each artist is doing a column, and it's as well traditional woodcut, but I sliced the posts in a shape that you can make a round shape. So original in my studio, it was laid out as such, and I was carving on the floor as such. So and later it became this column. And we will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A quote from Amanda Gorman's poem, what she was reading when Joe Biden was coming into power as president in America. So, and it's as well with other protagonists, Hannah Arendt again, Lisa Fitko. She was a helper for refugees in the Second World War during fascism. Walter Benjamin was helped with her aid over the Pyrenees in Spain, and so on. And it's kind of a diary, but as well extended diary. And local people, Erich Mühsam was a revolutionary anarchist in Bavaria. So the whole piece is made for Bavaria. And Anita Augsburg, a feminist, a very early one. Yeah. All right.
Okay,
So
thank you. Very interesting talk, Thomas.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, no problem. Well, I mean, 10 more minutes probably we'll finish what we want to do. Okay, so we'll a couple of questions from me, and then we can finish the talk. Okay.
I have time. I'm now
You're
available. Sorry.
You're almost lunchtime. Your side, right?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So I want to. I mean, you started up as a painter, right? You said you used to draw, and then you went into printmaking, and then for a lot of three-dimensional works. How do you see yourself do you see yourself more printmaker than how do you position yourself?
I position myself as an artist, actually.
Okay.
Using printmaking a lot, but I use as well installation. I use as well video. I use still as well drawing. Not so much painting actually at the moment, but and if it is the adequate medium, I use printmaking, and especially the carving is a kind of the trigger for me to come into the printmaking. So the cutting of a floor, for example, it's kind of an ambivalent thing. On the one side, you destroy something, you cut it up, you intervene. It's a subtle aggression, but at the same time, you create something of beauty. And this moment, which includes, so to say, both, it's a lot of brings my attention to this kind of work, and so I come back and forth often to printmaking, and I still love this kind of ambivalent process.
Okay. I mean, when you talk about your earlier prints, I was quite intrigued by one of your pieces that because when you do your prints from the floor, you take care of this ceiling as well as the four walls. And then I was thinking, when we as an audience, we are practically walking into your prints. So exactly. It's a three-dimensional experience more than just a something to the eye. So I think you are making some sort of what they're calling now emerging art. You know, is it like a submersive kind of experience rather than instead we don't have to wear the goggle for the virtual reality, and then we are inside your prints and we're walking around, and that I appreciate a lot. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any response to my comment just now?
No, I think that you perceive it totally exactly as I wish. So okay. It interests me as well if you as the audience, so to say, and the audience is standing on the work. It's not just with a distance to it, and get it that it involves everything. Like you are, so to say, you have to define your standpoint between the negative, the matrix, so to say, you stand on, and the positive, and you are in between. And where am I? And where do I move? And how do I move on this image as well? Do I step in the face or not? And so on. And do I walk aside of the motive? Or is this part of the motive more important or this? And so start. And I like that the visitor needs to find herself, himself, and you define it, how to move, and that it is not given from my side and to channel you like a cattle or something, like that you are free how to move and stuff.
Yeah, I particularly like your piece that you talk about the British Library building.
Orient collection.
Because you're putting all of your prints onto the window as well, so the whole building becomes your art piece. And I was thinking if you have ever tried to leave it from the inside, and then at night you can see that as a lantern, you know, of all this portraiture. It would be very nice. I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, this is something it evolves while working in the building. I didn't know that from before, that I can strip off this UV filter on the window. So I discovered it while playing with anything, and I never printed before on this UV film, for example, and so it was provided through the opportunity.
And I think it's an excellent piece. moving on to my other question. I mean, your piece have always been involving a lot of public figures, right? So, what is the intention behind? What do you want to do with these images or with all these art pieces through your making?
On the one side, it's as well a question, how do we relate to our collective memory, which is as well embedded in the media, and the use of these images are used in the media. And me as an artist, can I bring them together in a new context and work with the past, but of course for the future, or for our presence and the future? And do I have the right as well? Do I appropriate media images as an artist, and am I eligible to do that or not? And do I need to ask for permission for the photographer or the one who owns the copyright issues and stuff like this? I like to go on this kind of path, and I think the media has another duty and works differently than art, and that I bring as well, like maybe content together which never would be together in one image before they are opponents, or they dislike each other and so on. So I like to mingle and give it a new context. Right. So you as a visitor need to reflect upon it, and you cannot just digest it as a consumer. Then it would not work. You know, you need kind of your own reflection in it, because I don't give you a hint who is, so to say, the good guy and who is the bad guy. So you have to define it for yourself again. And this is the process of emancipation I want to trigger. I would love that people who come to the exhibition can enjoy, oh yeah, I can think about that from a new perspective. But, yeah.
So have you talked to these viewers or audience about their reaction or their responses? Did they respond or they react to what you have expected, or the other way around? What do you feel?
It's less, the impact in society as an artist is less than I wish it would be, I would say, and I have to cope with this disappointment, I would say, that my opportunity to change the world is very marginal and very small. And so I know a little bit the other side, the political activism, and I know that it is not what I can do. I failed to a certain degree to do that. And I have to confess, okay, I try my best within the art to come forward with ideas and as well a subtle standpoint, so to say, and a critique to the existing world as we have. But the impact is very small, I think, directly. And
even in an environment like you are in Europe, I mean, the Northeast Europe is already sort of relatively free and open compared to Asia.
But mass media, of course, have another audience. The audience in art is like maybe 1% of society goes into art museum, or 2%. It depends if it is Picasso exhibition or Albrecht Dürer. Of course, you have more than 10% maybe of the society who is interested. But in contemporary art, normally it's a very small part of society. But yeah, this is as it is. And
okay, you're content with it.
Especially if you work like me, you go into empty buildings. Who the hell is very like keen to go in a smelly, old, vacant, derelict maybe building, you know, like in my first projects, due to get demolished. And so I like most people in the society, they like the precious, the museum, you know, the frame and all that. And if it is dirty and tidy, exactly. But if this is a construction site, why is this art, you know? And so, but this is interesting to me as well. I mean, this question of...
Right. So, do you regard yourself as an art activist or an artist activist?
It's a good question. I'm an artist. I'm full stop. So,
okay.
And as an artist, I think I'm interested to interact with a society.
Right.
The artist in the ivory tower is not so much of interest. I think art only comes to become really art as a medicine or as a
remedy,
humus to work in the society when it is shown to the public. So this is kind of a must do, that the artist is going out of the studio and shows her or his work, and then the society can react to it and will do. So you get people who dislike it, and you get people who love it, and then they can reflect upon it, and you get a feedback. And this is the interesting process I'm after. So I would say, as an artist, I promote the idea to be able to have exchange with a society. And whatsoever, if you paint flowers, or if you have a portrait with Mao Zedong and a critique on ultra-capitalism, or something like the Communist Party never wanted to have capitalistic structures. This is the second thing. The important thing is the communication whatsoever. Or you are depicting a deer, a roaring deer, or you know, these classic masculine or landscape painting, whatever. There can be as well a little, so to say, political message in it. But maybe it's very subtle. As Andy Warhol, for example, he made the flowers as he did the most wanted portraits of people who were the most wanted in America, and it was a scandal. And so I think it's quite interesting. As an artist, we are free. But of course, I want to respect as well people. I don't want to harm anyone or who is like on the weak side. So, yeah.
Thank you. Last question from me. So what's next for you? Are you working on some big projects at the moment? Are you planning for something more interesting?
I have ideas, and I had to step back a little bit for my health issues with the heart. So this is kind of a new situation, but I will come back to to projects and comprehensive projects, but maybe in the size they will be smaller.
Right.
And my physical ability to do these large, let's say, floor cuts or so, I think this is something I don't need to top it.
Right.
And it's not only a matter of size also. And to reduce this kind of physical and to condensate it more in a maybe smaller size, but that it is intense as well. This is, I get, right. I have the feeling this is the way I will move to.
And it is your challenge to you in the next step, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Thomas, for your time. And
Yes,
you take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And we'll see you again soon, either online or we are traveling over to Europe. Okay?
Fantastic.
Thank you, Thomas, for such an inspiring talk on his prints and printmaking projects. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and please stay tuned for the future talks of the series. Bye.